Hi, Jeff here at Comprehensive Driving Tuition. So you've had your first lesson now, and your head is buzzing with all this information, and you're all excited because you've driven the car down the road for the first time, and you're thinking, how can I remember all that? Well, this is the idea of these next few videos, okay? The next few videos are quite short ones. They're going to be, one is going to be about the controls of the car, there's one about the cockpit drill, and there's one about the safety precautions before you start the engine. So this one's going to be about the controls of the car. Now, when we went through the controls of the car, we first of all went through the pedals. And if you remember, the accelerator is on the right, the brake is in the middle, and the clutch is on the left. And you've only got 2 feet, so one foot has got to use 2 pedals and one has got to use 1. And you use the right foot for the accelerator and the brake. If you remember, it's a good idea to try and get your foot in a position comfortable for the brake, and then just move it a little bit to the side to use the accelerator. Just to recap on the accelerator is a very powerful pedal. It provides the power to the engine, it puts fuel into the engine, and when you press it, you can make the car accelerate, and when you depress it or come off it slightly, you can decelerate, which is the slowing the car down. When you press it, you shouldn't press it too hard. You should press it maybe about the thickness of a pound coin, and when you come off it, you shouldn't always come off it suddenly, but it's sort of gradual. It's a very subtle pedal, so try and treat it like that. Okay, that brings us to the brake pedal. If you remember, with the brake pedal, you have to press it down a little bit before it actually has contact with the wheels and makes the wheels slow down. So you can be pressing it about this much really before anything happens. So and then when you do find that point, if you press it too hard, then you will brake very, very suddenly, and we'll all go like this, forwards and backwards. Okay, so that's not so good. So you need to quite subtle control of it with your right foot. Also, when you press it, you get the rear lights on the back of the car warning drivers behind that you're going to be slowing down and possibly stopping. Okay, the little bits of detail is that the brake works mainly on the front wheels of the car, but also on the back, whereas the handbrake, if you remember, only works on the back wheels of the car. So the handbrake, the foot brake rather, is there to is designed to make the car slow down deliberately. Whereas the accelerator, when you come off that is just the engine slowing you down gradually. Okay, so there's 2 ways to slow your car down: use of the deceleration and use of the brake if you need to stop a bit quicker. Okay, a good idea also with the brake, and you practice this more on the lessons ahead, is that you generally, the principle is you press a little bit more so you can press a little bit less. Okay, but as you do that, you'll find that maybe you'll come off it and then you won't be braking at all, so you'll gradually learn to suss out the subtlety of the pedal and how it works. That brings us over to the clutch pedal, which is usually the most complicated one to understand. But basically what's going on there is that you've got to have some way of transferring the power from the engine to the front wheels of the car, this being a front wheel drive car. And the clutch is the connecting thing. So when the clutch pedal is down, the engine is disconnected from the wheels, so the engine cannot make the wheels go round. Okay, and when the clutch pedal is back up again, the engine and the wheels are connected, so that the engine can make the wheels go round, and therefore when you press the accelerator, you can accelerate and decelerate. It's a little bit, the clutch is a little bit like the chain on your bicycle, if you remember. I used that illustration probably on your lesson, that when your chain is off your bicycle, you can pedal, but it won't make the wheels go round. When the chain is back on, you can pedal and the wheels will go round. Okay, simple as that. Now there's a point, if you remember, halfway up on the clutch, which is called the biting point, and that's the point where the engine and the wheels are starting to connect, and the power can be transferred from one to the other. Okay, if you remember, it's like 2 plates that come together, and the one attached to the engine is spinning, and the other one comes closer to join it as you bring the clutch up. That's the biting point, and then the one that's spinning wants to make the other one spin together until they're firmly locked in together, which is when your clutch is gone through the biting point and up, and then the engine and the wheels are connected. If the clutch is down, the engine and the wheels are disconnected, and you can't use the accelerator to drive your car. Okay, it is a bit complicated, but that's basically what the clutch is doing for you. You also, if you remember, need to push the clutch down every time that you change gear. Okay, so before you move your gear lever position, you have to have the clutch pedal on the floor. Okay, I'll cover a bit more of that when we do the gear change lesson. So the next thing we had to go at was the use of the handbrake. The handbrake is the lever that's down here on my left. Remember, to take the handbrake off, you need to pull the lever up a little bit, push the button in, and then let it go down to the floor. And then to put the handbrake on, you push the button in, you pull it up reasonably tight but not overstretching it, you hold it tight with your muscles, and then you let the button out, and then when you let go of the handbrake, it should stay there. If it doesn't stay there, it's probably you haven't brought it up high enough. So try again and bring it up a bit higher next time. That's the handbrake. The handbrake, in driving, we basically don't use it a lot, but we do use it whenever we're waiting. Doesn't matter where we are, whether at traffic lights, roundabout, T-junctions, whatever, we use it just if we're waiting. So if you're stuck somewhere and you think, take a bit long here, then you put the handbrake on. The other time that you put the handbrake on is when you're stopped and you're on a hill. So that brings us to the use of the gear lever. The gear lever's got 5 gears that go forwards and 1 that goes backwards, called reverse. Okay. First gear's got all the power, but it hasn't got much speed, but which basically means you've got a lot of acceleration and deceleration, but you won't go very fast as in miles per hour. Whereas 5th gear is not very good for moving off. You will not be able to move off in 5th, but it's good for when you get over sort of 40-50 miles an hour, up to 60-70, etc. That's good for those sort of speeds. And obviously all the gears in between are gradually getting faster with less power. So we always use 1st gear if we're stationary and we're going to move off. We use 2nd gear pretty much for when we're going to sort of a jogging, cycling pace, you know, that sort of jogging slow sprint. 3rd gear obviously when you go a lot faster, and then 4th gear when you're back up to sort of 30-40 miles an hour. As a rough guide in this car, 1st gear is from 0 to about 10 miles per hour, 2nd gear is roughly from 10 to 20, 3rd gear is 20 to 30, and 4th gear is 30 to 40, and 5th gear is above that. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward. When you're changing gear up, we tend to change from 1st to 2nd to 3rd to 4th, etc., whatever you need. But when you're changing gear down, you don't need to, you basically select the gear that you're going to need for the next situation. So if you're driving along, say at 25 miles an hour in 3rd gear, and then you see a queue of traffic ahead, or the traffic lights change, and then you slow down to about 10 miles an hour, and then something changes and you can go again, you might want to go down from 3rd to 2nd. But if you went down to sort of 5 miles an hour or had to stop and you were in 3rd gear, then you'd miss out 2nd and go straight from 3rd gear to 1st gear, ready to move off again, because you're going at 0 miles an hour, or very, 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 very slow. Okay, so that's the use of the gears, and that's what the gears are all about, and we'll practice obviously the gear changes, and I'll show you about the gear changes on another lesson. That brings us onto the steering wheel, which is right in front of you here. Basically it's powered steering. If you remember, there's a hooter at the beginning, at the middle bit here. You can pretty much press it anywhere and you'll get the sound of the horn. It's powered steering, so it's easy to turn. You should have your hands at 10 to 2 so that you can easily use the indicators, which are this side, and the wipers that are that side. If you have your hands down here, you've always got to find the lever. If you hand up here, you've always got to come down to find the lever. So it's best to have your hands at 10 to 2, and that's the best place. It feels good. When you're driving in a straight line, you don't really need to steer the wheel very much, maybe just a tiny little bit either side. And when you go around certain cars, you just sort of drift out and drift back in, so you hardly move the wheel. If you come to a situation where, like, you've got to go around a sharp corner, say from a main road into a little side road, then you'd have to steer the wheel a lot more. Okay, but there's only one way to find this out, and that is to do what we do on the lessons and go ahead and practice. Your hands should feed the wheel through. The wheel should be fed through your hands, and you shouldn't let your hands go over like this or over like this, and you shouldn't let go and let the wheel spin on its own. Okay. These are things that you've seen a lot of people do, I know, but at the end of the day, your examiner is testing to see whether you can steer the wheel the correct way. So you've got to show them that you can. So we'll practice that. Briefly mentioned it before, but the indicator's here on the left. It's up for signalling right, down for signalling left, which, if you think about it, is the same way as you steer. So if you steered that way, we'll be going right, and the indicator would go up with it, and down for left. The wipers are over here, and we'll use them when we need to. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this controls lesson, and I'll see you on the next one.